Present are myself, along with Fusco and Mosley Samples. We did have a meeting last week. Can I get approval of those minutes, please? We got approval in a second. All in favor? Aye. All right, moving along. We have 4 new pieces in front of us. Our first piece, ordinance 2018 determining to proceed with the improvement of Britton Road between the termini of Talmadge Avenue and Independence Avenue by constructing and reconstructing curbs and concrete sidewalks and declaring emergency. We have Chris Lettle, John Moore here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is our sidewalk project we're doing with ODOT between Talmadge Avenue and Independence. We're installing new sidewalks where there are no sidewalks, so this was our last piece of this project. We brought it for you a couple weeks ago, the other part, but this is the last piece of it to start. So in order to get our lockdown date of April 16th, if we could have this passed, we'd appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. Anything else? All right. Do we have any questions from committee members? Mr. Kilby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is in my ward. How much are the assessments going to be on the property owners per linear foot? Do you have it? You know?
It is the uniform rate. I believe it's in the neighborhood of $11.25 per linear foot.
$25 a linear foot?
No, $11.25.
Okay. All right. Now, we discussed this, and this came about because mostly they developed a few stores on the east side of Britton Road, and mostly because of the people who live at the Niemer Tower, want to cross the road. Some of them are disabled, and I understand it's good, but I just don't think it's fair to the people who live on the east side to pay for the assessment only, when the people that live on the other side of the road are benefiting as much, if not more, from this improvement. Is there any way we could assess everybody on that stretch rather than just the people on the side of the east side? Is that possible?
We only assess the side that's benefits, sir.
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
if we did sidewalks on the other side, then they would be assessed,
yeah,
if we replace
it benefits everybody that lives on Britton Road, but the people that probably, I'm sure I'm going to get a number of calls, people say they don't want it, but it's for the benefit of everybody, I understand, that lives on Britton Road, and people walking up the street that don't even live on Britton Road. So it just, well, okay, it's $11.25 a linear foot. I guess we can't do much about that. I support the improvement. I just think it's something that we should look at, maybe finding some way to get everybody to pay a little bit for it that lives on that stretch of Britton Road. So that's my opinion.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kilby. Any other questions, comments? With that, what was your pleasure?
If we could have it passed, we'd appreciate it tonight.
All right. All right, we have a motion to suspend the rules with favorable report. All in favor? Aye. Yeah, no, you want to second that? All right, we have a second. All in favor? Aye. So everyone's opposed. All right, we'll pass that this evening. Thank you. All right, next piece, number 11, ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service to submit an application and enter into agreement with the Summit Akron Solid Waste Management Authority for the Community Recycling Assess Grant in furtherance of Mayor Horgan's objectives of supporting new and existing community recycling projects which would sustain and increase recycling activities within Summit County and declare an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a grant that we applied for. It's just under $200,000. As you can see, it's $199,110 that we received. So this just gives us the authorization to move forward with this grant.
All right, thank you. Anything else? Any questions from committee members, council members? All right, what's your pleasure?
Since it's a grant of this amount, could we suspend the rules and pass this?
All right, thank you. Can I get a motion to suspend the rules, please? All right, all in favor? Aye. All right, we'll pass that this evening. Our next piece, number 12, Resolution 2018, amending and restating Exhibit A to Resolution number 86/2018, passed March 19th, 2018, with respect to the 2018 Phases 1, 2, and 3 unimproved street resurfacing program, declare an emergency. Mr. Ludlow and John Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The resolution that we passed last week, it had the wrong exhibit, and this amends that the exhibit for the streets. Council received the full list of streets last week, but on the legislation, it didn't have the correct street names and number of streets, so we increased that.
Okay. Any questions from committee members? Council members? Mr. Neal?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is more so just so it's recorded. Mr. Ludlow did answer my question, my one concern, but I don't know how it is in other wards. My concern was that there are some streets that aren't on the list that have, I'll use my ward as an example. I've got a bike trail as we were speaking on Copley Road. President Somerville, you'll understand because right when it hits Store Avenue, we share Copley Road on each side, but the bike path part stops. My concern is this: the side of the road where bikes would have to ride is where the worst chuck holes are. So if someone's riding a bike, you know what I'm saying? And I know it's not on the list, but if we can be sensitive of looking throughout the community where we have these bike trails, where those streets may not be paved, because Copley Road, like I'm saying, if somebody's riding a bike where we've just paved it and it has the bike path, it's smooth. But as soon as you hit that part that's past Store Avenue, big chuck holes. I'm gonna name another spot where somebody may remember, because I hit that chuck hole. This was on West Exchange Street, right down from First Grace, where it used to be, now it's Emmanuel Christian Academy. That chuck hole was about that deep. The city filled it. But if you're riding a bike, you're through. So just if we can, I don't know how we would do that, but.
Yeah, you left me that message.
Yes, sir.
And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have our permit crew that does all the water main breaks, because they will be able to come in and do that lane with our own guys. They'll lay down the asphalt and roll it in for you.
Yes, sir. No, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
More so as a concern throughout the city, wherever we may have bike paths, if we take extra consideration to those streets that aren't being paved. Because if they're like mine, they're gonna be pretty dangerous.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Mr. Kilby?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this list that's on this legislation, you're just adding some that some of these were already on the old list, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Just a general question, like my idea of an unimproved street is a street that doesn't have curbs or storm sewers. Is that the definition of an unimproved street?
Correct.
Okay.
Typically curbed.
Okay. What's the difference in cost between resurfacing an unimproved street and an improved street?
Residential?
Yeah, residential. Is it a little more expensive probably for a residential improved street? Is it?
Yes.
What's,
residential unimproved is $875.
okay.
Residential improved or curbed is $665.
Yeah. Okay. Then the other concern I have, and I don't know if any other ward council people have looked over their lists, there just seems, and I know we hire consultants to do a survey and go out there and decide what streets are going to be done, and I understand there's more consideration to it than just which are the worst, okay? I mean, naturally you don't want to dig up a street that's going to be scheduled for, you don't want to do a street that's going to be dug up in a year or two, or a street, you don't want to do a street that, I know you know, we want to cluster these around certain areas. It's much cheaper if they can do like 5 streets in the same part of the ward, but I have streets that are really much worse than a lot of these streets that aren't on the list. And it just seems to me the primary consideration should be the condition of the street.
It is.
Is it? Okay.
Yes, sir.
But I'll tell you what, I have some concerns. I talked to, you know, Mr. Hall here, couldn't remember your name for a second, just before the meeting, and I don't know, who should I talk to, Jim or you,
Both
Mr.
of us.
Luddle?
Both
Okay.
of us.
Because why aren't they on the list? Because I'm getting calls already, because this has been posted on our website apparently, because I'm getting emails from people saying, well, you know, I looked at some of these other streets and they're not nearly as bad as mine, and I have to agree with them, and I don't know what to tell them.
If you have a list of those streets, we can definitely look at them for next year.
I don't right now, but I'll have one for you.
Yes. If you have them,
Off the top of my head, Oxford and Patterson, I
Yes,
guess
sir.
between Talmadge Avenue going south are really, really bad.
yes, sir.
And everyone's complaining about them. They're not on the list. And some of these streets like Grand Park and East Park that are on the list aren't that bad, in my opinion. But we'll talk about that. I'm going to go ride around and look at some streets and see some streets, in my opinion, that really need to be done bad that are in my ward, okay?
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kilby. Any other questions or comments? Ms. Samples?
Thank you. I just, as I look through this list, and just based off of, you know, the conversation and the articles the last couple of days, I'm trying to look at the list and get a grasp before we vote on streets that surround SUMA. I see a lot of Brookdale Avenue and East Market on here, and I'm just trying to figure out which streets around here surround SUMA. And my concern with that is we have SUMA, who's building a new wing onto their hospital, trucks coming in and out, and when we talk about equity and SUMA being who they are, I just wish if there's a way we can have some consideration with moving that equity to South Akron. And I mean, SUMA has enough money to pave streets. I mean, they're building a new wing over there. I'm concerned that they're getting a lot of attention around a hospital that's building this big project, and then we have a community that didn't seem like they got any equity out of this at all. Not saying that, you know, I know it wasn't intentional, I absolutely know that, but just when you look at it, when our residents call us, it looks bad on our part that a whole community was not given. I got a little tiny street called Clay Drive over in that area. I don't know what Mr. Kamer and Ms. Somerville seen on their maps, but I didn't see anything. And so as we talk about SUMA and a lot of streets being done around there, I just want us to really think about the consideration and reconsideration of hitting South Akron and SUMA doing some things or assisting financially and putting in some roads and streets when they have this massive project going on around them. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Samples. Any other questions? Hold on before I go back to you, Kilby. Any other questions from council members that haven't spoke? Mrs. Sims?
I guess I'll just ask the question once because it's for 12 and 13. Do you have this broken down in the wards? The streets on here?
Yes.
Do we have that?
I thought you got the entire list, ma'am.
We got,
I thought you got the entire, all the resurfacing last week. That did not, the list that we gave to council with all the streets, that did not change.
Okay,
Just
thank
the
you.
exhibit changed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, now, Mr. Kilby.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow up on what Councilwoman Samples said, does SUMA, since they're a nonprofit, do they pay assessments?
It depends how the county, charitable pays a lower rate, but they do pay.
Okay. But
So I don't know if they're under charitable or non-charitable.
Okay.
So they will pay.
They will pay something, but not as much as a resident?
They will pay the same as a resident.
Oh, they do? Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
They won't
So,
pay the same as an
I know
industrial.
churches don't pay assessment, do they? Churches don't? We can't tax a church, can we? Or can we? For assessments? I don't know. Does anybody know?
Mr. Bowman?
Yeah, there is a difference between an assessment which specifically benefits a property and real estate taxes, for which most are
Okay,
exempt.
so we can assess a church even?
Yes.
Okay, good. At the same rate, or is there a different rate?
Again, I don't know what goes into the calculation of something being a charitable rate or not, but it would, if they're qualified for the charitable rate, it would be at the same rate as the
Yeah,
residential.
well, these hospitals now are mostly for-profit. They're not even nonprofit institutions, so can somebody look into that to see what their status is for me and get back to us? Because I really do think they should pay the same assessment as everybody else, and naturally, I mean, you can't, I mean, they don't own the street, but we can't force them to pay for it, even though they could pay for it easily, and, but I would like to make sure they're paying their fair share and not, you know, paying less than the poor people that we represent in this city.
All right, thank you. With that, can I get a motion?
Mr. Chair? Sorry.
Sorry, Madam President, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Just more so a comment versus a question. I know that so many of our streets in Akron definitely need to be touched, but I just wanted to commend John, Chris, Jim, just the whole team, because you have the daunting task of just selecting just a very small handful in the first go-around. So just wanted to commend you for all your hard work, because when I look at my list, they really are some of the worst streets in my district and the ones that I get the most phone calls about. So I just really want to thank you. Although there's tons more we need done, I don't want to, you know, not say that, but just want to thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Fusco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do know that we had received an email reference how the cost breakdown per ward,
Yes.
correct? And it's pretty close in terms of,
I think it was about 6% between the highest and lowest. They were all
Yeah.
right there. Yes.
and so, and I know some
But you
wards, some
can't stop,
districts.
I mean, to make them totally even, you can't stop in the middle of a block. You know, you have to go to the next corner. You know what I
Right.
mean? So sometimes those limits change a little bit. That's why we're a few percentage off in each ward.
Yeah, well, and I know some areas of town that has got more problems than others, there's no question about that, but in terms of trying to disperse the money equally among the various wards, and it's a challenge just to get that done in and of itself, but I also know that time is of the essence on this, correct?
Yes, it is.
In terms of the asphalt plants are now open, and we want to get this out to bid as soon as possible so we can get these, get these streets in place so that they can begin to settle and get established, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Correct.
Very good. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to recommend a favorable report with suspension of the rules.
Thank you. Can I get a second? All in favor? Aye. All right, we'll pass that this evening.
Thank you.
All right, our next and final piece, number 13, Resolution 2018, amending Resolution number 88-2018, passed March 19th, 2018, with respect to the 2018 Phase 1, 2, and 3 residential resurfacing program and declaring emergency. Mr. Deletto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There was an error on this legislation when it's the multiplier. It was $11.50, and it should have said $8.40, and then that'd be under number 1 of last week's, and then the other one was the residential multiplier, which we had $8.75, which should have been $6.65. So to do the correct assessment rates, we have to amend this legislation. So we're dropping the one by $3.10, and we're dropping the other one by $2.10.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, committee members? Council members, Mr. Kilby?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So these are the improved streets we're talking about in this?
Yes, yes, the assessment rate was wrong in the legislation.
It's a typo.
It was wrong, the one we passed last week.
I thought you just told me, maybe I got it wrong, but was this the assessment? It was $8.75 on improved and $6.65 on unimproved?
No, unimproved is more, sir.
Oh, okay, all right, I got you. Okay, thanks, I had it backwards, that's
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Kilby. Any other questions? Mr. Fusco, did you have a question?
No, I'd like to, if there isn't any questions, I'd like to ask for suspension of the rules with a favorable report.
All right, can I get a second? All in favor? Aye. All right, that's our final piece. We'll pass that this evening. We're
Thank you,
adjourned.
Mr.
Thanks,
Chairman.
folks.
For the record,